Okay, good morning everybody, both live in person and out there in cyberspace. Um, this talk that you're going to hear is a talk that has evolved over the years. After the first couple of years at Contest University, I realized that we had a lot of really good talks on how to build antennas and what kind of radios were the best and so on and so forth, but we were missing something. So I called Tim up one day and said, you know, Tim, something's wrong. We're missing something. We're not getting into the motivation. We're not getting into teaching people how to operate the right way, how to operate ethically. And he said, great, you're right. We need an ethics talk. Can you have it ready for this year? So I got drafted to doing it. That's an important life lesson, by the way. If you say something needs to be done, beware that you'll probably be volunteered to do it. So I did the talk, and it came out okay, I guess. Tim said, hey, we need that next year too. Can you make a couple of changes? So we did it again. And after a couple of years, I said, you know, it's a little bit preachy. This can't be the K1DG preaching to the everybody talk. Someone else ought to do it. So we delegated someone else to do it. And he made a few changes, and it was great. And then another guy did it the next year, and he made a few changes, and he did it great. So we've come full circle. I'm back doing it again. But when I looked over the slides that were used last year, I didn't recognize most of them. This was not the same talk. So when I looked it over and said, you know, we also need to kind of get the fun element into this whole thing. So for those of you who've been here for all 12 CTUs, you've seen this talk 12 times, and it's different every year, and this is no exception. For those of you who are new, maybe we'll cycle back if you come here for the next 12 years, and maybe it'll evolve back to the way it was 12 years ago. So let's get started here. Which button? Oh, I bet if I push this. Okay, so let's talk about this sport of radio contesting and how you explain it to a non-ham, someone in your family, someone at work, someone at a party who comes to your house and says, hey, what are all those big antennas for? And you say, well, I do ham radio. Oh yeah, okay, that's great. Well, I actually turn it into a sport, and I do radio contesting. Okay, how do you do that? So, well, what we do is all around the world, we all sit in our radio shacks and for 24, 48 hours, and we log all the stations we contact to see who can make the most contacts in the most states or the most countries or whatever. Oh, well, that's sort of interesting. How do you know who won? Okay, well, see, what we do is we send our logs into the sponsor, usually a magazine or some organization, and they check them. Oh, okay, how much money do you get for winning? Oh, nothing. So, why do you do this? I had an old colleague at work whose motto, so I was already headed to a career as an SO2R guy way back in 1968, I guess. Well, I upgraded. A couple of years later, WA1JYY was my call. My one-year novice expired, and I couldn't take the week off from school, or the weekend, or whatever it was, to go off to the FCC and take the general or advanced test, so I had to wait a week till school was out. And so I missed becoming WA1ICD and became WA1JYY instead. And this was my station. It took about 5 minutes to change bands. It's remarkable when I look back. It's remarkable that I worked anybody with this setup. But this is a modified Heathkit DX100. That's a single sideband adapter. And there were so many adjustments on this thing that it really was a miracle that I worked anybody. But I did get on in the 1969 sweepstakes. The CW weekend was great. I worked 183 guys in 22 hours or so of operating. On sideband, you know, with all the band changes and the adjustments on the sideband adapter and being as weak as I was, I only made 117 contacts in 16 hours. Oh, I was 19 hours on CW. And there I was. In Eastern Mass, I was sort of in the middle of the pack on both modes. So I'm moving up. I'm not dead last anymore. And by 1969, I had figured out how to send in a log. When I was looking over this stuff, trying to get my scores from 1969, I said, gee, I wonder who else was in there. So this is the top 10, or the division leaders box. And those little green arrows indicate guys that are still active, that you might have worked in the last few months. Some of them are hiding behind multi-ops, some of them have changed calls, and I may have missed a few here. But look at that list. That's, you know, somewhere around not quite half of guys that from 1969 are still playing this game. Why are these guys still at it 50 years later? Well, it's not the abundant cash prizes. It's not the admiration of their family, friends, and coworkers. It's certainly not the groupies. There must be something else motivating these guys to continue to play this game. What is it? Well, this is where things got interesting for me. This is the 1973 Open CD Party. For those of you too young to remember, this is a prehistoric version of the North American QSO Party. And I operated from my college club station, but back in those days, a bunch of us all got second station licenses with new call signs, so we could sort of hide under those. And mine was WA1RBR, that's me, WA1JYY is the operator. And look at that, I won Eastern Mass. In fact, at that point, I said, boy, that's a pretty big score. Look, the next guy in Eastern Mass only has half the score. And going through the listing, I said, gee, that's pretty good. How did I do? And it turns out W9DOB had a score that was 95 points higher than mine out of 331,000. That's 0.3 of a QSO. That's how close it was. I missed the box listing. I missed the top 5 by 0.3 of a QSO. Damn you, Spike. So here are the top scores. And these call signs are also still familiar. W6PAA is now N6RO, WA2UOO is W2GD, K4PUZ is sitting over there, he's N4ZZ now. WA5LES is K5RC. I forget who the operator was at W9YT, but he's probably sitting in here or watching over the internet. All these guys are still on the air. K2TR, K5RX, K5RC again, K5NA, and W9XR. These were the top scorers in the Open CD Party. Then they're still crazy after all these years. So they're doing it because it's fun. That's the only reason you continue to do something. And where does that fun come from? It comes from a lot of different forms. Personal satisfaction is one of them. Did you make a better score than last year? Did you get a better score than that guy? Whoever that guy is, whether it's the guy who beat you last year, whether it's W9DOB who beat you by 0.3 of a QSO 50 years ago, and not that I still remember that, and not that I'm bitter or anything. You might find a cool band opening you never saw, that 2 a.m. over the pole opening on 10 or 15 meters that no one else got, and you got, and you worked all these obscure Asian multipliers. Finessing your way through a pileup, especially if you're QRP or have lousy antennas or whatever, or you're geographically disadvantaged, but you figured out a way to sneak through. That's very satisfying. That's fun. It can be part of a team, whether it's your local club or your big regional contest club, or a bunch of guys who got together in a multi-op and you beat the multi-op at that guy's place. And peer recognition's a pretty cool thing. I gotta say, I do get a kick out of getting a plaque in the mail or being invited to stand up here and tell you guys about this radio contesting game. So there's a lot of fun, a lot of ways fun can come from doing contesting. Now, as you start playing the game, you come to a place where you need to make a decision on how to do better. You can play by the rules, that's the angel, or you can make up your own rules, and that's the devil. So playing by the rules, how do you play by the rules to get better and have more fun? Well, you can work on improving your skills. Get on the air a lot. Learn the call signs, practice your CW. You can operate with using power that's consistent with your operating class. If the rule is 100 watts, operate with 100 watts. I have a confession here. I don't operate the NCCC Sprint Mini Ladder contest. That's a 100 watt CW contest they do periodically. And I was fooling around one night and I said, oh, listen, there's a bunch of guys doing a contest. I think I'll get on and do this. So I switched on the amplifier and ran around and worked guys. And boy, I was beating everybody in pileups. I made a lot of contacts. I was doing great. And then I remembered that they get together on some frequency on 80 meters afterwards and sort of talk about what went on. So I dialed down and I listened and I hear N6RO saying, yeah, it looks like we had some new guys on this time. Heard K1DG in there. Anyone notice he was a little louder than everybody else back east? So I checked in and said, hi Ken, it's Doug. Is this a 100 watt contest? He said, yeah, it's 100 watts. I said, oh, well, okay, that's why I was louder. I was running 1500 watts. So I fessed up right away. It was inadvertent, it was an accident, but and I didn't send in a log, so there. Don't use the cluster when you're a single op unless it's permitted, but most contests don't permit it. And that's playing by the rules. And submit the log when the contest ends. Don't be one of these guys who waits until the very last minute of the contest log submission period so you can check around and see what other guys entered your category so you can pick a different category and get a plaque or a certificate. Or put some more QSOs in your log of guys you didn't really work. You can make your own rules. You can work on being obnoxious on the air. You can work on getting more power. Turn those knobs all the way to 11. If you don't know that reference, by the way, write this down. This is Spinal Tap. This was Spinal Tap. It's a mockumentary about a musical group, and they customized their Fender amplifier or Marshall amplifiers so that everyone else only had amplifier knobs that went to 10. They modified them so they went to 11, so they could be louder. Make your own rules. Use the cluster. Who's going to know you're using the cluster? Yeah, I'm just going to watch those spots, and no one will know. We'll know. Or you can make your own rule by taking the time to scrub the log, fixing calls that you figure out are wrong after the contest, adding some new ones, adjust the times if you're a multi-single and you broke the 10-minute rule. Well, I'll just change this time by a couple minutes earlier or a couple minutes later. Those are bad things. There's been a lot written in the last few years about why people cheat. And you can sort of sum it up. People want to be a hero on the field of competition, so they cheat. They break the rules for their own benefit. You can achieve immortality via community legend, fame, and lasting peer recognition. That's if you get away with it. It works a little bit differently if you get caught. Seeking current community stardom. That guy had the biggest score. Boy, he's really great. You can prove your superiority over others. It's a derivative of sibling rivalry. It's a way of proving your own self-worth. And these are all powerful forces, and you have to think about them a little bit. The biggest rationalization for cheating is, well, everyone else is doing it, so I'm going to do it. Everyone else is running power, so that's what I'm going to do. We did a session of Contest University in a country in Europe a while back, and Tim and I went over and gave some talks, and a guy pulled me aside at one of the breaks and said, Doug, listen, you operate a K3LR sometimes, right? Yeah. And you've operated a KC1XX? Yeah. How much power are they really running? I said, 1,500 watts. Why? He said, no. It's just you and me. How much power are they really running? I said, 1,500 watts. He said, no, it's impossible. Over here, we all run 3,000, 5,000, 10,000 watts. That's the only way we can get ahead. I said, well, what's the power limit in your country? Oh, we don't care about that. I said, well, okay. The guys over here do care about that. We don't cheat. Operators move around between the stations. Everybody knows what everyone's running, and they're 1,500 watts. If one of these guys, if I showed up at Tim's one year and he said, listen, we're going to be really loud on 15 this year. Look at this box. And I would look at it, and I would probably get on a plane and go home. And I think that's true of most of the other operators at the big multis. So it's provably false that everybody is cheating. We don't cheat. Some people cheat and they say, well, nobody gets hurt. It's just me. Well, yeah, if you beat a guy by 0.3 of a QSO by running higher power, just as a random example, and not accusing Spike of anything. He was a good guy. It's the guy that you beat gets hurt. He got deprived of something he should have had. Well, nobody was watching, so I can get away with it. Well, that's not true anymore, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. I can't afford a big antenna. I live in the black hole in a valley surrounded by mountains. Mountains in the black hole? Well, whatever. Yeah, that's an unfair disadvantage, but you know what? Life's not fair. Make the best of what you've got. Compare your score to guys in similar circumstances. And if you really want to play the game and get up in the higher scores, then move. Put up a bigger antenna. Do something. Do something that's within the rules. Some guys say, well, the rules don't disallow what I did, so they don't say I can't do it, so obviously I can do it. And I'll talk about that. And then there are people who say, well, those rules, those are for everyone else. That's not for me. There was a movie made up about Sergeant Bilko. Remember that guy? And there's one scene in the movie where Someone says, Sarge, we got this memo about how we have to do this. He says, that's Army stuff, doesn't apply to us. Of course, they were all in the Army, but he made his own rules. Well, the rules do apply to you. This is one of my favorite Calvin and Hobbes cartoons of all time. It's in your book. Little 6-year-old Calvin there is saying, I don't believe in ethics anymore. The ends justify the means. It's a dog-eat-dog world. I'm going to do whatever I have to do and let others argue about whether it's right. And then his pet tiger pushes him over and he says, why'd you do that? He said, well, you were in my way and now you're not. The ends justify the means. He said, I don't mean for everyone, you dolt, just me. The rules are for me. Well, no. People do notice. You may see comments like this either in the hallways here or on 3830 or on private mailing lists where someone will say, that guy was too loud in the NAQP, which is a 100-watt contest. Or, you know that guy? He's got a pair of 8877s. Or that guy, he's been using remote receivers in wherever. That guy uses spots and he enters as unassisted. That guy padded his log with bogus contacts. That guy turned his compression and his microphone so far up that he pushed away all the nearby stations to keep his own channel clear. People do notice. Don't be that guy. Nobody likes that guy. And, you know, if Bill Murray says it, it's got to be true. Cheating basically fundamentally boils down to rudeness. There are written rules that people break, like this guy. It's written right there, 12 items or less. And he's got a whole bunch of stuff, and he says, I love these short lines. Well, okay. Well, over here, there's no sign that says, park between the lines. So this guy said, well, it doesn't say I have to park between the lines. I guess these are just suggestions, so I'm just going to park wherever I like, and that way no one will scratch my car. So he's breaking an unwritten rule. Is that fair? That's not fair. That's rude. Someone else could use that parking lot. It might be 0.3 of a foot closer to the door. There are some guys who decide that the way to the top is by using excessive power. And again, this was Spinal Tap, and this is the amplifier where the knobs all go to 11, not just 10. So there are some unwritten rules in contesting. Don't make prearranged schedules. Don't go around saying, okay, you know, this time, this frequency, get on and work me. Do identify yourself frequently. Don't ask friends to work you and only you. I've seen that happen. Don't encourage your club members to only work you. Encourage your club members to get on and work everybody. Don't work friends with multiple calls. You know, I happen to know your wife's got a call too. Let me put that one in my log. You know, that's not really fair. Work and spot stations equally. Don't just spot your friends. Spot everybody. They need the help too. Don't use telephone or text message to get multipliers on the air. I once was operating at a station in a fairly rare country, and the host operator handed me a postcard that he had gotten with a beautiful pen and ink drawing of a woman in a negligee on the front of the card, and on the back, and it said on the front, "We are," call sign of multi-multi, which I won't tell you. "Would you like to work me?" And on the back it said, "Here's the frequencies and times we'll be on. If you can't hear us, here's our phone number. Call us up and we'll work you." And the station owner said, "I got this card in the mail. I don't know what you want to do about it." And I said, "Well, I'm not going to do this." So anyway, telephone and text messaging is not the way to get multipliers on the air. Help casual callers enjoy the contest. When a guy calls in sweepstakes, says, "I don't know what you need, but I'll give you a QSO," walk him through it casually. Don't give him the, "Well, this is a sweepstakes contest. If you don't know the rules, you shouldn't be on the air working anybody." Sure, hey, what year did you get licensed? "Oh, that's great. Hey, how much power are you running? More or less than 200 watts? "Oh, that's great. You work anybody else? "Okay, well, that'll be number one. So go and work a bunch of other guys and give them this sequence of stuff." And now you've got a new guy who's going to have some fun. Don't let others help you in your single op effort. When you get tired, don't ask your buddy to come in and sit in for a little while. Single op means single operator, one, you, not some help. That's not written down as saying you can't let someone else help. It does say only one operator, but people sort of say, well, it's I who operated, then one other guy operated. It wasn't the same as me, but this is also another unwritten rule. Don't plop down 100 hertz or 50 hertz away from your competitor to disrupt their run. And the ARL has published a thing called HF Contesting Good Practices, Interpretations, and Suggestions. Those are enhancements to the written rules. The CQ contests mostly have a little FAQ section, which is for stuff that's not in the rules that you might want to take a look at. Log washing is another thing that is not always expressly written down. You can't use all these other databases to try and find call signs that are in your log that are probably wrong and then change them. You really shouldn't do that. You know, the contest should be over when 2359 rolls over to all zeros. That's it. Pencils down, you know, send the log in. There was one contest where about an hour after the contest, K5ZD called me up to compare scores, and he said, "So did you send your log in yet?" I said, "No, I'm too tired. I don't want to screw it up." He said, "I don't want any log washing from you. Send the log in." So I said, "I'll do it in the morning." First thing in the morning, I sent it in. There was one contest where it was really close, and I said, you know, I don't usually do this, but I'm going to actually look through the log and see if I have any really stupid typos, because stupid typos, I think, would be legitimate to change. I went through that whole 4,000 QSO log, and I couldn't find anything I wanted to change. So I said, you know, this is kind of a waste of time. From now on, I'm just going to send them in when it's done. So I do. There are some people who just don't get it, even after they get caught. I've tripped over this article where Lance Armstrong admits he would still be lying about doping if he hadn't been found out. He would still do it, and he admits it. Well, I appreciate his honesty in that regard, but you know, this guy really cheated and continued to deny that he was doping, and that was just not on. Honest competitors earn respect. Hank Aaron hit 755 home runs. He was the man. This guy hit 762 home runs, but I don't care about him. And then there's that guy. Hello, my name is that guy. His name is that guy. He decided he had a way of winning a contest which involved pretty much every way of cheating that you can put in a book. I don't know about running high power. I don't know how much those amplifiers run, but everything else he did. He added bogus contacts. He did all kinds of terrible things. He got banned from all CQ contests for 5 years, disqualified from entering WRTC. All his previous wins were deleted from the record books. And you know, this doesn't sound like fun. And I'm sure it's not fun for him if he's watching online for me to be standing up here and using him as an example of what not to do. So don't do that. Don't be that guy. Now, someone told me it's all about cultural differences. So I looked it up in Wikipedia about rules and ethics and interpretations of rules. And apparently, and this is Wikipedia's definitions, not mine, in England, everything which is not forbidden is allowed. In Germany, everything which is not allowed is forbidden. That's that. In France, everything is allowed, even if it is forbidden. And in Russia, everything is forbidden, even that which is expressly allowed. And the corollary to that, I think, is everything which is expressly forbidden is the best way to succeed. So I was trying to graph that out, and the best I could do was do with two axes, rules and behavior. The rules go from the not forbidden to forbidden, and the behavior becomes whether it's allowed or not allowed, actually how people respond to it. And in England, of course, if it's not forbidden, it's allowed. In Germany, if it's forbidden, it's not allowed, and that's the rules. In France, I don't know, what did I say? Nothing is forbidden, so everything is allowed. And in Russia, everything is forbidden, so some guys do everything and some guys don't do anything. So I was trying to figure this out, and it's too complicated for me. Covering up your cheating takes way too much effort to be fun, and chances are you're not going to get away with it these days. The reverse beacon network and wideband recording systems can verify what really happened on a frequency. Packet and skimmer cheating is relatively easy to detect these days. Power outliers are sometimes obvious. We take plots in some contests of taking a look at how a guy did compared to everyone else in his category. And the guys who are in the low power category, who are really running high power, really do stick out like a sore thumb. They are very, very obvious. Then you can go back and look at the RBN, which is an imperfect tool, but it's an interesting starting point. And chances are, if some guy's been running high power to cheat, he's done something else to cheat, so we figure out something on him. If you wait until the log deadline so you can pad your log with guys who didn't submit a log, we'll find that one now. The fact that all the logs are public for most contests means that there are a few people out there who will crowdsource their way into doing some analysis. And if you are doing something that you shouldn't be doing by putting bogus QSOs in there, it'll get found. The rules get more complicated. Do you know what this game is called? Right, and how does it work? You hit one and knock it down, and another one pops up somewhere else. That's how the contest sponsors feel about rules these days. Every time someone figures out another way of, oh, they didn't say I can't do this, so this is what I'm going to do. Okay, we didn't write that down, but it was obvious you're not supposed to do that. So now we'll put that in the rules. And you end up with rules that are, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of lines long, which is no fun for anybody. So we would rather that you expend your time and energy in more positive ways. If someone beats you, send them an email and say, hey, nice job. You beat me, fair and square. Can I get a copy of your log and your rate sheet? Here's my rate sheet. Where did you beat me? If you're getting clobbered on a specific band, figure out why. I'll give you a hint. It's your antenna. It also may be your alarm clock. I lost a lot of contests by oversleeping the morning openings on the high bands, but that's another story entirely. Review your log checking report, and you might be able to learn something from it. I'm going to give a talk a little bit later about that with some examples, including some audio, because I have a recording of my CTU Worldwide phone contest from last year, and I went through my log checking report to try and figure out, where did all these not in logs come from? Am I doing something wrong? So maybe you can learn something from that. You'll gain great satisfaction from improving your station and your skills. At the end of the day, you'll be able to say, you know what? I got beat by this other guy on 15 last year. I figured out a better antenna. I figured out a better height for it. And I didn't oversleep the opening. And I beat him this year. Yes! That's one of the best feelings in all of this sport, when you can say, I made a change, it worked, and I have the results to prove it. Now, every once in a while, you'll come across a cheater or a guy you think is cheating, and peer pressure is the most powerful tool we have. Now, you have to be aware of your motives. Are you going after this guy because he beat you? Is it a personal thing? Well, you're probably not the right guy to approach him. Maybe you need others to help deliver the message. Give the benefit of the doubt. The guy may not know that what he's doing is against the rules. You have to choose the right time. Can the guy listen without feeling attacked? People get very defensive when you say, hey, by the way, I noticed you were using the cluster. You're cheating in the contest. You can't do that. You may have just tuned the guy out. So you have to figure it out. You can't be angry or accusatory. Say, you really can't use the cluster as a single operator. I don't know if you saw that in the rules. I know you probably use the cluster all the time, but it's single operator category. You can't do that. Focus on the actions. Don't say, you dirtball. This is not the right way to operate. And be there. People cheat because they see other guys get away with it, and not confronting the problem hurts everybody. So if you find a guy who's cheating or breaking the rules inadvertently or on purpose, figure it out and help deal with it. How well that communications worked is defined by the receiver. You may have a very eloquent argument all lined up with all the facts and so forth, but if the guy is like a dog, all he hears is his call sign. He doesn't hear anything else. It's all blah, blah, blah. Ginger! Oh, you said my name. It must be good. Must have done something good. Of course, if you have a cat, cats don't hear anything. Cats are evil. Trust me on this. We can discuss later. Cats are evil. Sorry, Sandy. Cats are evil. Now, we also have to recognize one thing. If you're here in this room, or if you're watching this, you took the time to watch it on YouTube, or you're streaming it, non-contesters don't like us. A lot of them don't. And we give them plenty of reasons to not like us. Jumping on a frequency, call CQ first and listen later, that's not very good to do. There are a few bad apples out there, and they create a bad reputation for all of us. There is this myth that all contesters run high power, and contesters take over all the bands. I ran into that myself once. I was doing a demonstration for a very big statewide Boy Scout jamboree about 10 years ago. And we strung up a dipole between the two big trees that were near where that tent was. And we were getting on the air and we were working guys. And then the clock turned over to, I guess, 1200 Zulu, and the Worked All Germany contest erupted on the bands. And that was when conditions were pretty good. And that was it. 15 meters was done. It was just too much QRM there. I said, you know, for years I've been telling non-contesters who complain about us taking over all the bands, I tell them, well, why don't you try those new bands, you know, the ones we've had since 1979. Try 17 meters. So I figured, well, I've been giving that advice, maybe I ought to try it myself. So I got on 17 meters, and you know what? There was no contesting there. The band was cleared. There was a few guys on there. I had all these scouts having a great QSO with a guy who was maritime mobile. He was sailing across the Atlantic, and he had loading up the backstay on 17. We yacked with that guy for about half an hour. When we were done with him, we worked a whole bunch of other stuff on 17 meters. Who knew? There's a real band there. So, you know, the next time you hear that, well, they're taking over all the bands. Well, okay. You might find a little interference on the net on 20 meters that you and your buddies have had for the last 20 years on the same frequency. You don't own that frequency. Why don't you go to 17 meters and try it there? So if you get confronted by a non-contester during a contest, it's your reaction that counts. You need to assess the situation. Did you really just fire up on the frequency? Maybe there really is a net there, and maybe it really is legitimate. Whether it is or not doesn't matter. They think it's legitimate. You landed on their frequency. They're unhappy, so maybe you should QSY. Maybe you're overdriving things. If someone says, man, your signal is about 50 kC wide, you're doing something wrong. Well, maybe you did sneak it up to 11 on the mic gain. Back it off a little bit. A clean signal attracts more callers. Actually, a dirty signal attracts a lot of callers, but it's not the guys you want. A clean signal will attract a lot of callers. I actually had guys call me and say, you know, boy, your signal sounds great. What are you using for a microphone? You know, nothing special. I just adjust it so it sounds good to me in the monitor. That's how you attract more contacts. You try to compromise. You know, if some guy says, listen, I've been down 2 kC for the last 2 hours and you just came on and you're bothering me. So, all right, listen, the band's very crowded. I'll move up a little if you move down a little. Maybe we can both work this out. It's worth a try. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Then you got to get on the bicycle and go find another frequency. The bottom line is put your ego aside. If you're operating in a radio contest, what's the object of the game? Make a lot of contacts. You got to make a lot of points. You got to make more points if you're sitting there arguing with the guy over whose frequency it is, or you're going to make more points if you're tuning around calling guys or finding a clear frequency where you can CQ without someone bothering you. That's pretty simple. Now, outside a contest, assure the contest hater that the vast majority of contesters run legal power, and you should invite them over to your shack to see your legal amplifier. If you have one of those big boxes, get rid of it. I don't want to see it there. What you should tell people is that the contesters that are loud because they have good antennas, they probably have good locations, and they've taken the time to be on the best band where they have the best propagation and they have the biggest signal. That's why they're loud. They're not loud because they're running big amplifiers. And tell them the contesters do some good. I had a little example, not just me, a few months ago. There was a little hurricane that went through the Caribbean and kind of trashed a few islands. So a week or so later, I was tuning across 20 meters and I hear KK4DCX. And I figured I should maybe help out. I'm tuning around. I'm looking for a net, and I can't find any nets handling traffic. But I find this KK4DCX guy, and he's saying, okay, can someone take a few phone numbers and make a few calls for me up there on the mainland? I have outbound health and welfare traffic. And I listened, and some guy with some random call called him, and he had to repeat everything. Okay, how do you spell Jose again? And you know, what was the number after the 3? There wasn't a 3. Let me give you the whole number again. So these guys were just not getting it. So I called in and said, listen, you know, you want to give me a few numbers? I'll help out. So I had a big antenna. I could hear the guy fine, and he was running QRP in a low antenna. And so he gave the message and the number. I said, okay, give me the next one. He said, are you sure? Did you get everything? I said, yeah, I got everything. Give me the next one. He said, okay. He gave me the next one. I said, no, faster. Come on, let's go. Get the rate up. So he handed me 5 messages, and I said, okay, I'll be back. And I made all the calls, again, at contester speed, got to keep the rate up. Made all these calls, and all these people saying, thank you, this is the first thing I've heard from my family in Puerto Rico. It's great, thank you so much for doing this. So I said, okay. I went back and I said, okay, I got all 5 messages through, give me 10 this time. Really? 10? Yeah, sure, go as fast as you can, I'll get them, don't worry about it. And he rattled off this, 10 phone numbers and messages and names. Said, okay, I got them. I'll be back in a couple of minutes. So I was not the only one doing this. A bunch of other contesters kind of tripped over it. Maybe they heard me doing it and said, oh, this is a good idea. So I see W1VE over there. He did about 10 times as many as I did. W1WEF. Jack, are you here? Did I see Jack here? There he is. Jack was doing it for a while. There are a whole bunch. K8AZ was on. All these guys, yes, stand up. So if you're in a club that's mostly into emergency communication stuff and they say, you contesters, well, what good is that? Well, let me tell you, it allowed us to get 6,000 messages passed out of Puerto Rico that would still be sitting on the hook there. So and outside a contest, if you get challenged about being a contester, be polite. There is published out there a contest code of ethics that the WWROF put together. I won't go through all the details here because we're kind of running short on time, but I've annotated them a little bit. The rules are all, there was a DX code of conduct that was out there, but there wasn't one for contesters. So we put one together. And it says, I'll pay attention to the rules. The 100-watt contest, I won't run my amplifier, for example. I will obey the rules for amateur radio in my country. I'll stay within the band, and I won't modify my log after the contest. If the contest sponsor reduces my score, okay, it's their contest. They reduce it. I'm not going to whine about it. I'm not going to threaten a lawsuit or anything. All these things have happened, but it's not the right way to play the game. The DX Code of Conduct is a pretty good set of guidelines for operating style. It mostly says listen. If there's MCOM activity, that's it, move. Contesting's a game, emergencies are real life. So if you're operating in a contest and someone says, we have an emergency net on this frequency, move, get out of the way. So I mentioned that this presentation has evolved over the years. These are some of the guys who developed various bits and pieces of the material. Ken Adams, K5KA, one of the most stand-up guys I've ever known. All the other guys on this list are pillars of ethics and very honest, straight-up guys that play by the rules, and they encourage others to play by the rules, and that's a good thing. So I'm grateful to their enhancements and additions to the original presentation because I think they made it a whole lot better. And the other acknowledgement I want to leave you with is from my biggest influence in contesting, K9HHN, later known as W9HG. How many guys have worked Howie? Nobody. He's not a contester. He used to go with the Norwood Amateur Radio Club on field day every year. Howie's CW is best described as music. I've never heard any CW operator as good as him. At least it gave me that impression when I was 13 years old. And then he got on, and I sat and I listened to it, and it was beautiful. I can still remember his Hallicrafter's TO keyer with that little LED neon tube blinking, flickering back and forth as he sent his CW. It was wonderful. It was an experience I'll never forget. So after watching Howie operate for a while, he said, well, I think we'll do some SSB now. So he went up on the phone band, and he was working guys, and he was just the most casual, laid-back guy, but the rate seemed like it was from Mars. He was just going so fast, I couldn't believe it. And he never had to ask for a repeat. He got every call the first time, and he was just, just casually, conversationally working all these guys, and the QSOs were going in the log. I said, wow, this guy's really good. So then he said, all right, you want to try it? And I said, me? You want me to? He said, yeah, come on, kid, here. So I put on the headphones, and I grabbed the microphone, and he said, all right, kid, go ahead. This is clear frequency. And what came out was something like,